Hey guys, yeah, I think Mika's here. Hello, Mika, can you
Hi.
hear me? Hi,
Yes, I
Mika.
can hear
How
you
are
now.
you? Hi,
I'm
awesome.
good.
All right, it's 7 p.m. right now in the U.S. Correct?
Yes, 7 p.m. PST, my coast,
Okay,
West Coast.
awesome. All right, for those who are wondering why we're holding a morning meetup here in the Philippines, so Mika's based in the U.S. Our speaker for today's activity, and yeah. Anyway, this will be rerun as well later this evening, Philippine time. So yeah, our viewers can also watch it to the recorded stream later on. And for those who's gonna watch this later on, feel free to jump into any questions or drop your questions in the comments. And yeah, we'll try to answer it, and Mika will be here to assist us as well. All right, so for today's meetup, the topic is quite interesting since a lot of people have asked this in the past, not only to the Product PH group, but also in the previous meetups we held. And I think this is going to help a lot of people, especially those who are new to the product management space, in terms of how to jump into a career path and in terms of how to grow yourself within the product management space. And for those who are joining us for the first time, just a quick background on Product PH and what we do. So here in Product PH, we help connect product managers and those who are looking into enter the product management space to each and every industry leader that we can connect to. So we are building the discipline of product management in the Philippines by providing access to skills development, better opportunities, and a worldwide network of various lecturers and product experts. So our vision, our vision is to build world-class products here in the Philippines. So as you know, with the rapid growth of technology in our region, specifically in the Southeast Asian region, we want the Philippines to be at the forefront of this disruptive innovation. And yeah, as I've said, we want to provide an open space for people to connect and share ideas and build relationships with each other through meetups and to various events. Fortunately, now since we're undergoing a pandemic, we're we're still trying to go with our vision by hosting virtual events such as this one. So my name is John, and I'm one of the organizers here in Product PH. So again, as I've said, our topic for today is quite interesting. The title is "Getting Your Foot in the Product World," and we're very fortunate to have Mika Reyes. She's a product manager at LinkedIn, and she will share her thoughts today on how to get into and grow a career in product management, especially now in the midst of the global pandemic that we are experiencing. So yeah, good evening, Mika, from your time. Good morning from here in
Good
the
morning.
Philippines.
Yeah.
Hi. Um, yeah, probably to kick off to the today's event. Would you mind sharing with us a little bit about yourself and what you do today? And probably you can also share quite a bit about your organization as well.
Sure. I'm Mika. Mika Reyes. I guess, background for myself, even safe professionally. I was born and raised in the Philippines. I went to Poveda and then Philippine Science, and then I went to college in the US. And I've been in the US since. I'm very passionate in general about building products and the product management world. And big goal is to eventually move back to the Philippines and the Southeast Asia region and build products for emerging markets. So really passionate about really understanding the problems there and being a tech leader in that space. Currently, I am a product manager at LinkedIn. And specifically, LinkedIn has like 100, 200 product managers in different teams. I'm in the jobs team. And what we do is help hires find the right candidates for their roles. So people are probably more familiar with the job seeking side, where you can see all those jobs on LinkedIn, apply to them, etc. I'm more on the hiring manager side, where they post those jobs and create those jobs that people can apply to. That's a little bit about me. Focus on specifically LinkedIn, focus on jobs growth. So helping more hiring managers create those jobs and feature those jobs on LinkedIn. Something within LinkedIn, what we like to say is like an introduction that's just fun is what's not on my LinkedIn profile. Something that's not on my LinkedIn profile, that's not professionally driven, is that I'm part of a hip hop dance group in Oakland, so nearby. We obviously can't dance right now physically, but we've been doing it virtually. So that's been always a highlight of my week.
Right. Yeah. Awesome. So we have it's good to know you're doing extracurriculars as well. Like a lot of people are asking what is it like how being a product manager? But there's also a fun side to it. As you said, you yourself you're engaging in hip hop. Well, now virtually. So yeah, there's a lot of hobbies with product managers as well.
Yeah.
Mika, you mentioned that right now you're handling the job section. You're under the jobs team for LinkedIn. In line with that, and probably even with the products that you built before as well, would you mind sharing with us what products have you helped develop and market out throughout your career?
Yeah. I'll maybe share the most exciting one and something that's a bit relevant to now. We're still in the process of building it. But it's this feature called Open to Hiring or Looking to Hire. And what that means is that you can go to your profile on LinkedIn and click this button and say, hey, I'm open to hiring more people. People are probably familiar with the open to job seeking part. We're going to build the same thing on the hiring manager side. And what that does for a hiring manager is people are already hacking their headlines, their profile headlines, and saying, hey, I'm hiring for these specific roles. And what we see as a problem to that is, one, it's a very hacky solution. Two is they get inundated with a lot of messages from people who are not qualified candidates, when instead they can feature those jobs on their profiles and people can apply to those jobs instead. So that's the kind of what we're replacing, what the problem is. On the flip side too is the job seeking side, right? And a little bit of a story is that's kind of how I found my job. Is I was searching for a hiring manager LinkedIn product when I was job hunting on LinkedIn, and the first person there was this woman who was a director of product management. I reached out to her, saw that her profile was very interesting, would be a great boss, reached out to her, and then today she's my boss. So I think I'm very excited about launching this feature because it's going to be outsized value for hiring managers and outsized value for job seekers as well. So there's that launching very, very soon. And I'm very, very excited for it. Yeah.
Gotcha. Oh, that's good to know. And in terms of since you are launching this product as well, would you mind sharing with us how large is your team that you're working on this feature right now?
Good question. Really hard to answer. I'll say I'm working with a couple of different people. There's engineers, and right now there's I want to say 11 or 12 engineers working on it. There's the market PM, product marketing manager. There's one person there. There's an engineering manager. There are people in finance, people on biz ops. So a lot of different folks and stakeholders. But I think something that aside from cross-functional partners, there's also a lot of other product managers that I work with. So what's really interesting at LinkedIn is where we think about everything from a platform solution, and things that I am building are touching a lot of different teams. So I'm building something on the profiles world, and so I have to go and be involved in conversations with them and have discussions with them and get into alignment with them. So something to call out as well as part of like a bigger company's alignment there.
Gotcha. I see. I think there's one good point. There's there's this cliche and there's this analogy that they always make about product managers, where yes, you mentioned like we as product managers we have to interact with a lot of different teams and there's a lot of cross-functional involvement as well. Um, and yeah, it comes from different departments and different aspects of it. Really have to synchronize everything that in order to build or ship a right product or a good solution. In terms
Yeah.
of collaborating with these teams, what are the common challenges that you face, like interacting from, say, the product marketing team, go down to the developers, down to the QA engineers, so on and so forth?
I'll start with like the hardest people to align with. Hardest people are like other product managers, in that to do our job well, we need to represent the what we call members or users that we're representing, right? So as an example, I'm representing the hiring managers, and that's like the product that I'm building, and that's how we think and need to advocate for. Whereas, let's say the profile team will think more broadly about, hey, how does profile as a platform advocate to make sure that like all the different things that arrive on profile are very consistent, they make sense for people entering it, which sometimes conflicts with how hiring managers are going to be thinking about how products there are involved. And as product managers, we're trained to have very strong opinions, right? We're trained to have like strong opinions about the users that we're building for. And so I'd say that like to do our jobs well, there's a lot of like conflict and a lot of like alignment and escalations that will need to happen that get escalated up to our managers and then up again to their managers and again and again and again. Those when it comes to cross-functional partners, I think for the most part, it's like the feeling of being in the same team, and not to say that, not to say that I'm in a different competitive team as product managers that I'm working with at LinkedIn. We're all thinking about it as an ecosystem, but within the same cross-functional team, working with engineers and designers, etc. I think the harder part is less the conflict that's still going to arise, and you're still going to have a lot of questions, but more on the things that are sometimes harder to control, which is like the morale and, do they understand what the strategy is? Am I communicating things properly? Am I really getting them on board in decision making, even though like at the end of it, I have to make those decisions, right? And there's a lot of changes and a lot of pivots that will always be happening, and a lot of things that we work towards, and in the end we have to scrap. Making sure that like they don't experience that same painful churn that you experience. You take the brunt of that, and then you make sure that the decisions you tell them are like, hey, this is for the better, right? So handling those kinds of like kind of emotional, or not emotional, but like different ways of dealing with things.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I guess that leads me to my next set of questions. Obviously, like there's a lot of emotional and physical challenges being faced by product managers, and for the next couple of questions, like I think this comes up a lot, like in different meetups and different activities or sessions from Product PH, and it's basically on how to become a product manager. And well, for those people who want to jump into the space or to grow a career in product management, probably would you mind sharing with us your journey and how you landed on your first product management role? What did you plan it at all, or was it by accident? And well, yeah, would you mind sharing with us?
Absolutely, totally planned.
Awesome.
I'll maybe like take way back. So in college, I hadn't really heard. Let's say this was junior year of college. I hadn't really heard what the product management role meant, or what it was really. But at that point, through a couple experiences in the past, I knew I wanted to be in the tech world. I knew that like this is like the industry I wanted to be in, the things that I want to be solving, the kind of work that I wanted to be doing was in tech. So what I did was committed myself to becoming a designer. So I was a product designer for this robotics company in my junior year internship. So my last internship before graduating. And what I found there was that as a designer, went to a couple of meetups, went to different events, but also talked to a lot of different cold emailed a lot of different people. And again and again, there's this inkling of this product manager role that kept popping up. And I was very intrigued and was very interested to hear more about what it was and realize that, hey, this product management thing that people are doing, like, I want to do it. I want to be in the intersection of design and engineering and business, and really understand how to solve these different problems and cater to a lot of my like personality. Like I'm a very varied person and like doing things here and there, and have this breadth of knowledge of different things. So I was very intrigued in it. Knew it was very hard, like getting your foot in the door of product management role is really hard. But what I did was talk to more people about what this was, the different paths that you could take. I think there's this misguided notion that you can only be going into product management if you have an MBA or an engineering background, which I totally think is not true. And eventually found my way to this associate PM program or fellowship, really. It's called the Kleiner Perkins Fellowship. That allowed me to get into my first role in product, which was in this other robotics company called Ripcord. What I'm not sharing here really is like the difficulty of getting into the product management world, especially without experience, because especially if like product management merits this chicken and egg situation of like, you need experience first. Oh, okay, how am I going to get experience by being in the product management role? Lots of journeys, lots of programs that I applied to and went through like first round interviewing and studied really hard for it and got rejected. So it's a really hard role to get your foot in the door in. But I say like my number one piece of advice for like, especially students, especially people still starting out, and trying to get their foot in the door in product management is find a problem and solve it. So find a problem within your community. Maybe it's there's no app for finding rides and you need to find rides instantly. Boom, Uber, right? But like, think about the problem that resonates most with you and build the solution to solve it. And that's like the best experience that you can get for like thinking about the design, end-to-end design, whatever the problem, like understanding how big the problem is, how big the opportunity is. And if you're able to even nail that and go beyond just building, like maybe make it a really successful product, then first off, then you don't need to be a product manager because then you're your own entrepreneur. But also it gives you the skills you need to build as a product person.
That's great advice. Yeah, appreciate it. And yeah, one important point that you also mentioned was that there's this common notion that you have to be engineers, you have to have this certification to be a product manager, you have to do a bunch of things. But yeah, really, there are different product management stories. Like if you interview different product managers, there's like different career paths that they really took into. And yeah, that's really
Mhm.
great advice. Finding a solution to a certain problem. That's a good way to start as well. Now, on that note, Mika, for over the past 6 months, we have been experiencing this COVID-19 pandemic. And
Mhm.
with regards to your advice, is there anything that changed in terms of like the situation now where a lot of companies are working remotely? Um, Different product managers are managing teams remotely as well. And yeah, there are obviously some physical challenges in terms of like um, doing traditional roles or like the usual roles that we have to accomplish. Is there anything that changed, or do you have any advice to upcoming product managers, especially in this pandemic that we are experiencing?
Um, Advice to product managers during the pandemic. I'd say, well, if you're someone who's still trying to get into the product management world, advice will still stay the same: is like find a problem and figure out a solution to it and build it. That's going to be the best proof point of you actually going through the product management cycles and putting something out there. Um, I think as current product managers or even just people who want to be solving problems, I wrote about this in my blog, but uh, it's an interesting paradox to be, building something in this time or thinking about solving problems in this time, because you don't know if those problems are going to stay like exist or stay the same, especially because we're in this special world of a pandemic, right? Maybe when we're out of the pandemic, who knows when, those problems don't exist. But I think there's opportunity to think about it as like, hey, this is another perspective or way to think about the world, um, and find those problems and things to solve, um, uh, and think about really how it's going to survive longevity. I'll give an example. So as part, I mentioned this open to hiring feature, right? And as part of this feature, we're launching an open to hiring photo frames. What that means is, as a hiring manager or even as a job seeker, you can go to your profile and say, hey, I'm hiring, or hey, I'm job seeking, I'm open to work. You signal that, but on top of signaling it, you can also put on your profile this like ring that says I'm hiring or I'm job seeking. And what that does is, on LinkedIn, wherever you go, wherever you type a comment, wherever you put something on feed, people see that ring, and they say, hey, this person is hiring, or hey, this person is job seeking, let me help them, or let me like apply to their job. Which, it came into priority because we're in this pandemic, because more people need to find ways to look for work or hire. But if you think about it, wow, that's like a really innovative step towards making hiring more viral. And we wouldn't have been able to find that situation in the first place if we hadn't come into this pandemic. So yeah, for product managers, for people who are looking for problems to solve, like, I think this is a great time to like really think about those kinds of innovations and things that we wouldn't have seen otherwise in different perspectives, but also like a really great time to be valuable, and be really, really impactful for people around you.
Gotcha. And in terms of the pandemic right now, what do you think is the most important skill that the product manager must have in order to succeed, especially with the challenges that we're facing right now?
Hmm. Especially with the pandemic. I'd maybe say this touches on the same things, a sense of empathy and compassion. The really nice thing about LinkedIn is we really like our leadership. And the really nice thing about LinkedIn is that Jeff Weiner, who used to be the CEO of LinkedIn, he moved. He's not CEO anymore as of like 2 days ago. But he has this idea of like compassionate leadership, where being a strong leader, having those strong opinions, but being very compassionate and empathetic about like the situations and the people around you. I think that's really important at this time, and I really see how LinkedIn is being compassionate with the way that people are working, and being very empathetic about like, hey, how are working moms and working dads in this situation? What can we do to support them? Hey, like this pandemic is making people less productive. How can we make sure that we keep those things in mind? A sense of empathy, a sense of compassion, especially as leaders, as product manager leaders. I think it's super important to make sure you still have that influence with the people that you're working with, through the empathy that you provide for them. And I think it'll make for a better like working environment, and you'll build better products out of it. The other note on empathy too is like, I think empathy in general for a product manager is important because you want to be empathetic to your users, especially at this time. Think about like, is some aggressive marketing material going to be like really sensitive at this time for people who don't have jobs or are thinking really sensitively about the situation that they're in. So being empathetic to users as well in this pandemic.
Gotcha. And in terms of the things that you shared, for example, for empathy, after the crisis is over, once we return to like a normal state, what things do you think will change, and what things do you think will remain right after this one? I mean, right after the period that we're experiencing.
What will change and what will remain? I honestly think that more. I wish I had a little bit more understanding in the Philippine working world, but I think in tech in the Bay Area, we've been provided a lot of like privilege for working from home, right? Like they pay for our tables, they pay for our screens, and they really give us like a work from home setup. Given that, I think that like work from home situation is going to be more popular, and more companies are going to move towards that like model because if they don't have to pay for real estate, cool, it saves them a lot of money,
right?
That kind of thing. So I think, and I saw a lot of surveys on Twitter or like different places, informal surveys and polls saying like, hey, if you were to work from home or work from the office, what do you prefer? And a lot of people said work from home, which is interesting, right? So I think there's going to be more inclination and social acceptance for working from home. Is a big difference. I think that there's going to also be more proliferation on like online learning, ideally. In the States, you'll see it in colleges and you'll see it in like MBAs. And, online learning platforms are already there, but really literally like schools having those online learning platforms and like really investing a lot of time on it, and scaling the bunch of programs that they can put in. I think those two things will change. Also online churches.
Online churches, yeah, absolutely.
I think it's another thing that there's a trend here. There's a trend. People are still going to find ways to go to church. Yeah. What I think will remain the same is it's going to take a while, but travel will come back up, because people still want to be visiting their loved ones from far away. I think that I don't think there's going to be any significant change in like hiring necessarily. It's affected right now, to be honest, because like not a lot of people are hiring and not focused on that. But I think once we get back into the world, like we'll still see those numbers come back up. Yeah, I think those primarily what I think about.
All right, awesome. And yeah, I think Because a lot of obviously like hiring has been affected because of the pandemic, but um, as also mentioned during our previous meetup, there's a lot of opportunities for disruption. So quite the contrary, like there are a lot of opportunities. And going back to your advice, like finding a solution to every problem, it gives much more diversified range of like how people or PMs can come up with different solutions for organizations. Um, yeah. Oh, by the
Mm-hmm.
way, for everyone on Jitsi, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat box. Um, yeah, probably Mika, we can run to some of the questions from the viewers. First
Sure.
one, uh, from Kite Lopez. Can you share your opinion on what is the difference between product owners and product managers? How do
Hmm.
organizations view their responsibilities between the two? Yeah,
Good
that's
question.
actually a common question as well. What's the difference between product owners and product managers?
Great question. I will be totally honest and say I have no clue. Uh, Main thing, and this is my like assumption. Well, main thing is like I've never worked with a product owner necessarily. I've always been a product manager, and like within the companies that I'm in, um, uh, haven't had like a product owner only focused role.
Mhm.
But what I assume is a role of a product owner, and please, anyone here, correct me if I'm wrong. But I assume is the role of a product owner is that uh, likened to what we call a TPM at LinkedIn, technical project manager, um, where they'll work with the different engineers, a couple of different folks to make sure that like the product is still running. They fix the tickets, triage those different things, triage the different bugs to make sure that we're fixing the right things and working really closely with engineers. Whereas product managers are a bit more high level and a bit more cross functional there. In that, we're solving problems. Literally, that's the job. And we're thinking about it from the lens of the business, of metrics, of course, working with engineers and prioritizing what engineers do to solve those problems. I think is a bit further away and more high level there. Um, Again, correct me if I'm wrong. This is my like assumption for what I've possibly read, but I've never personally been a product owner, nor have I. Work with a product owner. Um, yeah.
Absolutely, completely understandable. And yeah, there's a lot of debate on this topic as well. Like different organizations, they define product owners and product managers differently as well, especially for those adapting into an agile environment. So yeah, a lot of people can define a product owner in different ways as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. From Christian, is strategic marketing important for product management?
If it's important for your product, yeah, for sure. How I describe this is even in the product management role, it's very varied, right? But you know, take two product managers. One is just an example at LinkedIn. One is focused on figuring out what the algorithms are that will pop up in your feed at any one point in time. And the second one is focused on um, creating, growing, like maybe me, growing jobs. Growing the number of hires that are coming into the platform and discovering that you can post a job, right? I work heavily with marketing, and you have to be strategic about like what are the things that we're going to be saying, who are we going to be saying these to, who is the targeting, who are we targeting, how are we targeting them, etc. And strategic marketing is going to be important for that, and me working with my marketers is important for that. But the feed PM is not going to care about that kind of thing because it doesn't it's not within their ownership or not really within the things that drive the value for what their product is. So yeah, silly answer, but it depends. But if it really, really does involve your product, then for sure it's a very important thing.
Awesome. Okay, next question from Kite Lopez again. When LinkedIn bought or acquired by Microsoft, what was your first impression as product manager?
It's like a product management interview. Okay, well, if the question is when they were bought or acquired, what did I feel as a PM at LinkedIn? I don't know because I wasn't there. I wasn't at LinkedIn yet at that time that they were acquired. But if the question is really more like the interview question, what was my first impression at that moment? I honestly don't remember, but what I'll tell you, and this is caveat after reading like articles and after reading reasons why, is that there's a lot within the Microsoft ecosystem that LinkedIn is primed and positioned to be contributing, right? Like Microsoft is the biggest entity for everything enterprise, and adding LinkedIn into that, wow, look at the networks that you're able to see. Look at all of the data that LinkedIn is able to provide to Microsoft to make this network even bigger. Look at the customers that are also enterprise customers that now are also going to be Microsoft enterprise customers, and the synergies there. I think definitely made sense that such an enterprise-heavy company was going to acquire such a professional and enterprise-driven organization, and have that kind of synergy. Interesting thing, and this is just not insider knowledge, but just like an interesting thing I like to say is that when LinkedIn was acquired by Microsoft, probably not a lot of things changed. Like we're still in very separate what do you call this? Offices. I can't go into the Microsoft office. They can't go into my LinkedIn office. A couple things that did change that were apparent to employees was that there was a divide with people who were allowed to use Teams only and Slack.
Gotcha.
Like the R&D teams or the product engineering design teams, we can use Slack, but the marketing teams, they can only use Teams. So we have to talk to them 50 Teams kind of thing. And another thing is like everyone has to use Outlook. And I much prefer Gmail, to be honest. We have to use Outlook and Calendar there instead of Gmail products. So, yeah.
So there was, obviously there was also migration to Microsoft products across LinkedIn too, except for, as you mentioned, except for Slack, I guess.
Yeah, we also still use Google Docs, which I am thankful for. But yeah, some migration to certain products.
Gotcha. Oh, by the way, Eildon shared a link to the chat on the difference between product managers and product owners. You guys might want to check it out. Thanks, Eildon, for sharing it. Thank you. Okay, next question from Alexis is, what do you think makes a partnership between a product manager and a product designer successful?
Okay, I think I know who this Alexis is. Yo, shout out. I'll be like super candid about this answer and how I work with my designers. To be honest, the person I am closest with is my designer. And I say that because like he gets the brunt of like my anger with all the people that I have to be interfacing, and then I come to a design meeting with him and I'm like, yo, like here are all the different directions I'm getting. Let's figure out explorations for all of these, and he's very patient about it. But also I think I'm closest to my product designer because I think that like they're such a pivotal part to everything, a lot of things that I do, to make sure that like my vision is communicated visually. The designs are at this really good product quality bar that goes into like reviews and goes into like what engineers are doing. And I want to be close and candid with my designer because they need to know everything. I feel that they should have as much context as I can possibly give them, so that they know. I don't even have to say what they do. They just already know, okay, this is the strategy. This is what these other execs are thinking about because Mika told me. Now I can execute and just design according to those requirements. So going back to the original question, what makes a partnership between product manager and designer successful is that like openness and honesty, and candidness with each other to make sure that we're always in sync and building the right things and exploring the right things. And of course, like open and honest enough that you can give each other really candid feedback. And that's the process of the design, right? Like always getting feedback and iterating and getting to a better state every time.
Gotcha. And I think that also answers one of the questions here is that how would you define a problem being solved after launching a solution to address it? I think you answered it as well by going to the feedback loop and gaining insights from users as well, and iterating from different products.
Yeah. But if I could give a bit more color to that too, there's like I think the iterating is part of the way to get there. But crisply, how would I define a problem being solved after launching a solution is every time we launch something, we always have expectations. We always figure out, hey, here's the data, here's the TAM that we might get to. We might get like 80% of that, and this is what it amounts to. And when we launch something, we want to get to that expectation. If we don't get to that expectation, then there's something that we did wrong that's not within execution, or we need to do something more to get to the number that we want to. And if after a couple of tries you don't get it, after a couple of iterations you don't get it, that's fine. Maybe it's not the right thing to be solving and move on. But yeah, there's always an expectation, there's always a metric and a goal to be solving to get to that.
Gotcha. All right. Next question. Oh, the next question is quite interesting. A lot of people also mentioned this. How in-depth should a product manager know about tech and the business itself? Like, is there a bias between tech and business? And I guess follow-up questions to that would be, how do you know when to prioritize tech, and when do you know how to? I mean, when would you know you should prioritize the other one as well?
Business. My bias is that you should be favoring the business. And the business is always also going to be in context of the user, right? If it's tech, business, and user trumps everything. I think the business is closest to the user than it is to the tech, and the tech is really just the means to get to that answer. So I'd say, like, important to immerse yourself in the business because that's how it reflects your users. Understand like how competitors are doing, understand how your metrics are doing. Is it at par with expectations? Can you bring it up higher, etc. And the tech, I mentioned earlier on that I don't believe that being an engineer is a requirement to be a successful product manager. It helps to have those conversations with your engineers, but your engineers will respect you if you respect them and have a good relationship with them, regardless of tech background. And so I'd say, like, you don't have to be a tech guru to be a successful product manager. And I always say that, like, if you're coding, you're doing a bad job as a product manager, because you should be unblocking your engineers and empowering them to be doing that. And you should be working on the other problems to solve that you're uniquely positioned and need to be driving to solve. So yeah, my straightforward answer there is that lean more towards the business side, and that you don't have to be very in depth with the tech side, though it'll be a plus and a bonus if you can.
Gotcha. All right. And probably we can answer one last question from the users. Oh, by the way, if you have any more questions, feel free to drop them in the comment section in the recorded stream, which will be posted by Yana and Jan later on. All right. For the last question from the users, what is the hierarchy between a product manager and project manager? Where do their functions overlap? Product versus project manager.
So this one I can probably answer. Project manager. So the product manager again is like defining those problems, figuring out what the vision is for the product, thinking strategically about like what all of those elements are, and empowering a team to be doing that. One of the people that a product manager empowers to be doing that is the project manager. So project manager, depends again for different companies. Again, at LinkedIn, it's a technical project manager that helps us out, and our TPM will help with like bug bashes when we're about to launch, or coordinating all of the engineers and the Jira and figuring out the backlog and all these different things. Or maybe it's like organizing a party, to boost morale, kind of thing. So a lot of different things for, I'd say is not huge overlap. That's a privilege that we get for a bigger company. I'd say in a smaller company, it's the circles overlap a bit more. In that, when I was in a startup, I was a product manager and had to think about like the vision, what to build, etc. But I was also the one creating the Jira tickets, was also the one like managing the backlog, doing a lot of the project management task. That was then absolved from me when I was in a bigger company. So yeah, I'd say that's where the function overlaps and would depend in a big or small company too.
Completely agree. Yeah, it really depends on the different organizations how to implement it. Okay, probably just last two questions. As you know, just to close out this activity. You mentioned that you're going to be launching a new feature for LinkedIn soon, and good luck to that as well. Along with that, what's next for you, and what are your plans going forward as well?
As in at LinkedIn or in life or after the pandemic or
any way you would want to. Yeah, probably
everything. Okay. Maybe super long term. Again, I mentioned is like Philippines is very close to my heart, and working towards that vision and dream of like, hey, I want to be a strong product and tech leader in the emerging market scene in Southeast Asia. That's always been my North Star, and working towards that whatever way, right? Like maybe it's starting something of my own. Maybe it's getting into VC. Maybe it's being a strong product leader and being that thought leader there. But that's always been my true north. A bit more immediate term or mid-term, shorter term is I know that my heart lies in startups, and really love the hustle and really love like the fast-paced nature and talking to different teams and yeah, I really miss that scene. And LinkedIn is great. LinkedIn is a really good company, but do miss the hustle of a startup and being in the throes of it. So midterm, looking for those kinds of opportunities to learn faster and hustle faster.
Gotcha. I wish you all the best for your goals as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Probably just a closing remark. Mika, would you mind sharing with us some advice, your final advice, especially for those people who want to get their foot in the product world, up and coming product managers? Probably you can share your advice for them And especially now that we're facing the pandemic, probably you can share your thoughts, like some final words on those people who want to engage in product management.
Yeah. Same thing tactically, right? Same thing still resonates is that like find a problem, solve it, and find ways to solve it. Uh, if you want to be a product manager in tech, do it through a tech product. I think that's the most tactical advice I can give, and will always be giving for people who want to get into the product management world. I think more like emotionally, or more like wishy-washily, is that, hey, like acknowledge that it's going to be a hard, very difficult to get into the product management world. So there's a lot of hustle and there's a lot of work that needs to get done to get into it. And know as well that even being a product manager is a lot of hustle and a lot of work. And maybe that's what the process filters out for, right? Like people who are willing to go through all these problems and really solve it, and the next day still be excited to do more. So know that like if you really, really want it, you will get it. It will take a lot of hustle to get to it, considering how competitive it can be. But work hard towards it, and I'm super sure that you will find that world for you. And if not, then you'll also find out if it isn't the best fit thing for you, and that's fine. There are other things in the horizon. But yeah, I'd say like general idea of hustle and solving problems will be really key there.
Awesome. Great advice, Mika.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, and yeah, I think that's it. Thank you, Mika, for joining us today or tonight in the US. And yeah, I'd like to thank my fellow organizers as well, Jan, Yana, Jason, Ian, and Casper, for organizing this event. Mika, thank you as well for being part of our event for June. And
Yeah.
hopefully, hopefully after the pandemic, like we can host um, like a traditional meetup soon. But yeah, I guess for
Yeah.
now we'll do virtual activities for now.
We can do virtual meetups.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I
so
put
for the
just quickly, I put
yeah,
my
go ahead.
email on the chat. So if people want to reach out and chat further, have other questions, feel free to reach out.
All right, thanks, Mika. That's hello@mikareyes.com.
Yep.
Feel free to drop them off. And for those who are gonna watch the recorded stream, feel free to drop your comments as well if you have any questions. The Product PH community is there to answer those questions, and Mika will be there as well. Okay. And don't forget to join the Product PH groups. So we have a Facebook group. It's at facebook.com/groups/productph. And you can also join our meetup group for succeeding events. So that's meetup.com/productph. All right, thanks again, everyone, for joining us. And we'll see you on our next virtual event. Hopefully, it's a traditional event, but obviously, with the pandemic, things are still hard. But yeah, the next event, and thanks for joining us.